31. ज्ञातशत्रुः कृतमैत्रो हुताग्निर्विप्रां नत्वा तिलग्गो भूमि रुक्मैः गृहं प्रविष्टो गुरुवन्दनाय न चापश्यत् पितरौ सौबलिं च. Maharaj Yudhishthir, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice, worshipping the sun god, and offering obeisances, grain, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncle's or aunt, the daughter of King Subala. Ajatashatru. I'm not able to find it. Ajatashatru. इदानीं विश्वस्य मनसि तपस्तपतो धृतराष्ट्रस्य प्रायेण मृतिरभूत् ताविद शकुन प्रतिभासा विद्याः जातशत्रुः मित्रः सूर्यः तद्विषये कर्म मैत्रं संध्योपासनादि तत्कृतं तेन स कृतमैत्रः 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 means that he had performed a sandhya upasana and so on. गार्हपत्याद्यग्निषु हुतं येन स हुताग्निः तिलग्गो वस्त्ररुक्मैः विप्रां स्थापयित्वा रुक्मिं सुवर्णं च दत्त्वा पित्राद्युपवेशनस्थले पित्रादिगुरुवन्दनाय पितृगृहान् प्रविष्टः अजातशत्रुः तद् आयतनं नमस्कुर्वन् पितरौ कुन्तीधृतराष्ट्रौ सौबलीं गान्धारीं मनसा जीवन्तौ न पश्यत्. So here Madhvacharya has explained Pitarahu to refer to Dhritarashtra and Kunti. He did not see Kunti also. Sambratite mrita iti tasya manasi tatha pratyabhad. So he thought that they had died. Pitarahu ityatra pitra shabdena viduro atra na fikretah tasya shudra jatikvena avandyatvat. धृतराष्ट्रादि मृतेः पूर्वं युधिष्ठिरेण एकीभूतत्वाच्च न च अपश्यत् इति अस्य अनुक्त्वा धृतराष्ट्र गमनार्थाङ्गीकारे भारतादौ युधिष्ठिराद्यनुज्ञया गत्वा इत्युक्ते तद्विरोधो दुर्वाह. He's saying that in Mahabharata it is noted that Vidura left Yudhishthir after informing him. So it looks like there was some, he had informed him, but it still seems that Vidura's departure was unexpected. The Tattva is misconceived of Vidura as being just a Shudra who's unfit for being offered obeisances. That does not fit the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's a misconception. Madhvacharya doesn't speak like that. There's a difference between how we accept Madhvacharya and how we accept Madhvacharya's followers, the Tattvavadis. We don't accept the Tattvavadi interpretation of Madhvacharya. Pitaro Vidura Dhritarashtra. Sridhar Swami directly says that he did not see Vidura, he did not see Dhritarashtra. संख्यावंदनादिकं येन स नत्वातिरादिभिः सम्पूज्येति प्रविशति. चकारात् न ज्ञातवांश्च. He did not see, he did not understand where they have gone. The Baladev Vidyabhushan also says very clearly, Dhritarashtra and Vidura. Okay, anyway, let's continue. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The householders are required to rise early in the morning, and after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home by prayers, by offering fuel in the sacred fire, by giving the Brahmanas in charity land, cows, grains, gold, etc., and at last offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. One who is not prepared to practice injunctions prescribed in the Shastras cannot be a good man simply by book knowledge. Modern householders have practiced different modes of life, namely to rise late and then take bed tea without any sort of cleanliness and without any purificatory practices, as mentioned above. The household children are taken to practice what the parents practice, and therefore the whole generation glides towards hell. Nothing good can be expected from them unless they associate with sadhus, like Dhritarashtra. The materialistic person may take lessons from a sadhu like Vidura and thus be cleansed of the effects of modern life. Maharaj Yudhishthir, however, could not find in the palace his two uncles, namely Dhritarashtra and Vidura, along with Gandhari, the daughter of King Subala. He was anxious to see them and therefore asked Sanjay, the private secretary of Dhritarashtra, तत्र 32 तत्र सञ्जयमासीनं पप्रच्छोद्विग्नमानसः गावल्गणे वनस्तातो वृद्धो हीनश्च नेत्रयोः. Maharaj Yudhishthira, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjaya, who was sitting there, and said, "O Sanjaya, where is our uncle who is old and blind?" When is Pitrivya comes in the next verse. 33. Ambacha hataputrartha पितृव्यः क्व गतः सुहृत् अपि मय्यः कृतप्रज्ञे हतबन्धुस्स भार्यया आशं समानः शमलं गंगायां दुःखितोपतत्. Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura, and Mother Gandhari, who is very afflicted due to all her sons' demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offenses very seriously and, along with his wife, drown himself in the Ganges? Madhvacharya is very eager to make sure that we don't develop an understanding that contradicts the text of Mahabharata. The Pandavas, especially Maharaj Yudhishthira and Arjuna, anticipated the after effects of the battle of Kurukshetra, and therefore Arjuna declined to execute the fighting. The fight was executed by the will of the Lord, but the effects of family bereavement, as they had thought of them before, had come to be true. Maharaj Yudhishthira was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle Dhritarashtra and aunt Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. When therefore he could not find his uncle and aunt in the palace, naturally his doubts arose, and he conjectured that they had gone down to the water of the Ganges. He thought himself ungrateful because when the Pandavas were fatherless, Maharaj Dhritarashtra had given them all royal facilities to live, and in return he had killed all Dhritarashtra's sons in the battle of Kurukshetra. He was a Saragrahi. As a pious man, Maharaj Yudhishthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds. And he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord. But Maharaj Yudhishthira was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. That is the nature of a good man and devotee of the Lord. A devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. There is a Saragrahi. Bhaktivinoda Thakur often talks about it. If you think a little bit deeply, you can contrast it with Sarvagrahi and Sarvatyagi, one who accepts everything from others or one who rejects everything from others. A Saragrahi is not that. He accepts what is acceptable from others because he is result oriented, effect oriented. So this is what happened here. Okay. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that Yudhishthira was thinking, I did not even spare one son of King Dhritarashtra. So what is the use of my life? Thirty-four. Pitaryuparate Pandav Sarvana Sukhadashishun Arakshatam Yasanatah Pitrivyaupa Gatavitaha. When my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? Mathumuni interprets Pitrivyahu as Gandhari and Dhritarashtra, in which case this would mean when my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, Gandhari Devi and Dhritarashtra gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. So Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan points out that it can also refer to Vidura and Dhritarashtra. And this is Prabhupada's presentation also. It directly fits with the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. Madhvacharya's contribution is that he introduced to the world the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. He is our Vartma Pradarshaka when it comes to Bhagavatam. He was directly instructed by Vyasadeva to explain the Vedanta Sutra, and on another occasion, he instructed him to explain the Mahabharata. So therefore, he focused on these two scriptures. Everything else he explains in terms of these two. It was the need of the hour. 35. Sutta Uvacha. Kripaya Sneha Vaiklavya Suto Virahakashitaha Atmeshwarmachakshano na pratyahati piditaha. Uta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master Dhritarashtra, was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was overcome with affection, thinking about the two elderly persons who had known to take care of them. Sanjay was the personal assistant of Maharaj Dhritarashtra for a very long time. And thus, he had the opportunity to study the life of Dhritarashtra. And when he saw at last that Dhritarashtra had left home without his knowledge, his sorrows had no bound. He was fully compassionate towards Dhritarashtra Because in the game of the Battle of Kurukshetra, King Dhritarashtra had lost everything, men and money. At last, the king and the queen had to leave home in utter frustration. He studied the situation in his own way because he did not know that the inner vision of Dhritarashtra had been awakened by Vidura, and that therefore he had left home in enthusiastic cheerfulness for a better life after departure from the dark well of home. Unless one is convinced of a better life after renunciation of the present life, one cannot stick to the renounced order of life simply by artificial dress or staying out of the home. So Prabhupada is talking about progress without regress and progress without regret. 36. Vimrajya shrunipanibyam vishtebhyatmanam ajata shatrum pratyuche prabhuh padav anasmaran. First, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence and wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master, Dhritarashtra, he began to reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Fifty-seven. Sanjaya Vacha. Naham Veda Vyavasitam Pitrurvah Kulanandana Gandharya Va Mahabaho Mushitosmi Mahatma Bhiti. Sanjay said, my dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles and Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls. Madhvacharya says that I have been cheated is not to be taken literally. It's just emotionally overcome. It's just speaking some nonsense. There's an alternate reading also. It means Manidra samete gata. They left when I was asleep. What it means. That great souls cheat others. It be astonishing to know. But it's a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Lord Krishna also advised Yudhishthira to tell a lie before Dronacharya, and it was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of what is bona fide, and the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. That is the verdict of Gita and Bhagavatam. Yatah pravrittirubhutanam yena santatam swakarmanatam abhyachya siddhim vindati manavaha अतः पुंसश्रेष्ठा वर्णाश्रम विभागशः स्वानुष्ठितस्य धर्मस्य संसिद्धे परितोषणम्. Dhritarashtra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjaya, although he was constantly with Dhritarashtra as his personal assistant. Sanjaya never thought that Dhritarashtra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhritarashtra's going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjaya. So in this sense, Sanjaya, even though he's blabbering here right now that he cheated me, he didn't cheat him the way a thief cheats possessor of valuables, not like that in that sense. But there is some element of truth in what he's saying, because Dhritarashtra has a long history with Sanjaya, which is very evident in Mahabharata. And they had so much of heartfelt talks and discussions. But here, in this particular instance, Dhritarashtra did not disclose the purpose of his departure and so on. Sanatan Goswami also cheated the keeper of the prison house while going away to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And similarly, Raghunathas Goswami also cheated his priest. His priest was his initiating spiritual master, actually, who was a pure devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord, anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. Prabhupada's cheating was very simple. He said, I'm going. He actually said this. He did not speak untruth. He said, I'm going. But many times in the past, he had also gone out for preaching. And before going, that time also he would say, I'm going. He always says, I'm going. And he would come back also. He would go when he wanted, come back when he wanted. Family was always complaining. Oh, you're not giving enough money, you're not giving this. Basically, it's just standard complaint. Like Prabhupada said, if a man wants to take sannyas, the woman will never give permission. You'll always say, no, this is not done, that is not done. You did not, you're not responsible enough, and so on. So Prabhupada said the same thing. He said, I'm going. That's all. But in his mind, it was clear that he's going without ever having to come back. That they did not understand. So you might call that cheating. But there's no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. So this kind of, if one can benefit the whole world, if one can save the lives of others, then that is allowed. But other than that, we cannot simply just speak untruth. Speaking untruth is a very abominable activity. Should be avoided. That's a general principle. This is all extraordinary situations. Only transcendental fraud is allowed. Material fraud is not allowed. And certainly, material fraud disguised as transcendental fraud will be double punished. 38. Athajagama Bhagavan Narada Sahatumburuho Pratyuthaya Bhivadyaha Sanujo Bhyarchayan Muni. While Sanjay was there speaking, King Narada, the powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene carrying his tumburu. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his younger brothers received him properly by getting up from their seats and offering obeisances. Yudhishthira then spoke as follows. Evam kinchit kalam shochati tasmin atha Narada ajagama. So for some time, Yudhishthira was in a state of lamentation. Then Narada Muni arrived. Atrasti क्वचित् पुस्तके पाठान्तरं तदुल्लङ्घ्य यथा संप्रदायं व्याख्यायते. There is a different reading. What is that reading? Abhyarchayan munim niti evam rupam iti kyayam. What is here only? Abhyarchayan munim. It's here also. No, this cannot be the Pathantar. 1 minute. Let's see. What is the Pathantara is talking about? एतस्मिन् अन्तरे विप्रा नारदः प्रत्यदृश्यत वीणां वितन्तीं ध्वनयन् भगवान् सह किं गुरुः प्राज्ञादरो Vijay has accepted that. The meaning is the same only what we see in Narada. Anyway, Sridhar Swami is saying that as per the manuscript tradition that he has received, he's just explaining the reading that is here. Shokavegad abhyarchayan iva aha raja natu abhyarchayat. Shokakrantah kripavishta shraddhaya rahitah puman gurudevad vijatinam pujanam na samacharet. When one is overcome by lamentation, when one is overcome by compassion, when one is devoid of faith, interest, respect, a man should not execute worship of the spiritual master, the devas, and the twice born, according to Smriti injunctions. So the king seemed to uh, honor or worship the sage, but he did not literally do so. Oh, right, yeah. Okay, so the readings rejected by Sridhar Swami are noted by Jiva Goswami. They are found in Punyaranya and Chitsukha's readings. Both of them are Mayavadis. Jiva Goswami says that Madhvacharya wrote his commentary because he saw Punyaranya's explanation of Bhagavatam. Punyaranya's commentary on Bhagavatam is not available. Devarshi Narada is described herein as Bhagavan due to his being the most confidential devotee of the Lord. The Lord and his very confidential devotees are treated on the same level by those who are actually engaged in the loving service of the Lord. Such confidential devotees of the Lord are very much dear to the Lord because they travel everywhere to preach the glories of the Lord in different capacities and to try their utmost to convert the non-devotees of the Lord into devotees in order to bring them to the platform of sanity. Actually, a living being cannot be a non-devotee of the Lord because of his constitutional position. But when one becomes a non-devotee or non-believer, it is to be understood that the person concerned is not in a sound condition of life. So this is abnormal. The confidential devotees of the Lord treat such illusioned living beings, and therefore they are most pleasing in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that no one is dearer to him than one who actually preaches the glories of the Lord to convert the non-believers and non-devotees. Such personalities as Narada must be offered all due respects, like those offered to the personality of Godhead himself. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, along with his noble brothers, were examples for others in receiving a pure devotee of the Lord like Narada, who had no other business save and except singing the praise of the Lord, along with his veena, a musical stringed instrument. So it looks like Maharaj Yudhishthira sufficiently honored Narada Muni under the circumstances of Vedic rituals, even though he did not execute formal worship, because that is forbidden. Yudhishthira Naham Vedagatim Pitro Bhagavan Kwa Gata Vitaha Ambava Hata Putrarta Kwa Gata Cha Tapasvini. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt, who is grief-stricken by the loss of all her sons. Clearly, very clear. You can look at the text here, the Pitroho. uh, cannot refer to Gandhari. It must be referring to Vidura and Dhritarashtra, and the mother has to refer to Gandhari because Hataputra comes here. Madhvacharya has also admitted this is because he could not, Yudhishthira could not see them. Therefore, he's asking, where did they go? What is this? Why in 39 itself both of these have come? 39 and 40. Maharaj Yudhishthira, as a good soul and devotee of the Lord, was always conscious of the great loss of his aunt and her sufferings as an ascetic. An ascetic is never disturbed by all kinds of sufferings, and that makes him strong and determined on the path of spiritual progress. Gandhari is a typical example of an ascetic because of her marvelous character in many trying situations. She was an ideal woman as mother, wife, and ascetic. And in the history of the world, such character in a woman is rarely found. So therefore, the Dhritarashtra was particularly disturbed about her situation. 40. कर्णधार इवापारे भगवान पारदर्शकः अथापभाषे भगवान नारदो मुनिसत्तमः. You're like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed the godly personality, Devarshi Narada, greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. No, from that is one. Tapaswini, ascetic lady, indicates that she had accepted various restrictions and she was also in a state of distress. There are different types of philosophers, and the greatest of all of them are those who have seen the personality of Godhead and have surrendered themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Among all such pure devotees of the Lord, Devarshi Narada is the chief, and therefore he has been described herein as the greatest of all philosopher devotees. Unless one has become a sufficiently learned philosopher by hearing the Vedanta philosophy from a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot be a learned philosopher devotee. One must be very faithful, learned, and renounced. Otherwise, one cannot be a pure devotee. A pure devotee of the Lord can give us direction towards the other end of nations. Devarshi Narada used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthira because the Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord. And the Devarshi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed. "41. Narada Vacha. Ma kanchan shucho rajan yadishwar vasham jagat lokasapala yasye me vah balimi shituhu sasam yunakti bhutani sa eva vi yunakti cha." Sri Narada said, "O pious king, do not lament for anyone, for everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all living beings and their leaders carry on worship to be well protected. All pious living beings. It is He only who brings them together and disperses them. Swami. Adaveva yathavritta kathane shokena murchitah patediti prathamam tavat shokam upashamayati. If right at the beginning you had to talk about the events, he would fall down and faint. So first of all, he pacifies him. He wants to tranquilize him from his sorrow. So don't lament. Na kevalam taneva. Don't lament about those who have left this world, because they are not the only ones. Everyone is under the control of the Lord. He states this. He brings people together and he brings people away. There is something wrong with the. I haven't examined this, but at least I can understand this much. Jiva Goswami is noticing that there is a scribal error or some manuscript mistake. Because in certain manuscript traditions, you don't find a certain text. If Yudhishthira were to say, I am lamenting because I am missing them, I'm separated from them. But then Narada Muni says, but then there is no way to neutralize this, because the meeting and separation of personalities is under the control of the Supreme Lord only. Every living being, either in this material world or in the spiritual world, is under the control of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Beginning from Brahmaji, the leader of this universe, down to the insignificant ant, all are abiding by the order of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the constitutional position of the living being is subordination under the control of the Lord. The foolish living being, especially man, artificially rebels against the law of the Supreme and thus becomes chastised as an asura or lawbreaker. By the order of the Supreme Lord, a living being is placed in a particular position and is again shifted from that place. Nobody can violate the order of the Supreme Lord or his authorized agents. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Maharaj Yudhishthira, or in modern history, Napoleon, Akbar, Alexander, Gandhi, Subhash, and Nehru, all are servants of the Lord, and they are placed in and removed from their respective positions by the supreme will of the Lord. None of them is independent. Even though such men or leaders rebel so as not to recognize the supremacy of the Lord, they are put under still more rigorous laws of the material world by different miseries. Only the foolish man, therefore, says that there is no God. Maharaj Yudhishthira was being convinced of this naked truth because he was greatly overwhelmed by the sudden departure of his old uncles and aunt. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was placed in that position. According to his past deeds, he had already suffered or enjoyed the benefits accrued to him in the past. But due to his good luck, somehow or other, he had a good younger brother, Vidura, and by his instruction, he left to achieve salvation by closing all accounts in the material world. Ordinarily, one cannot change the course of one's due happiness and distress by plan. Everyone has to accept them as they come under the subtle arrangement of kala or invincible time. There's no use trying to counteract them. The best thing is therefore that one should endeavor to achieve salvation. And this prerogative is given only to man because of his developed condition of mental activities and intelligence. There is a different effect one experiences in different bodies, different gross bodies. For instance, in Ramayana Mahatmya, there's a discussion of a certain person who had offended his spiritual master and was cursed to become a Rakshasa. And as soon as he became a Rakshasa, instantly he developed the desires to eat human beings. He wanted to eat human beings. He wanted to kill. He wanted to just automatically impulsive. So when we are placed in particular bodies, then the impulses of those bodies are also part of life. But when one gets a human body, then one gets a different set of impulses. So therefore, these things are very, very important. Similarly, when one gets a demigod body, automatically the impulses are sattvic. Only for man are there different Vedic instructions for attainment of salvation during the human form of existence. One who misuses this opportunity of advanced intelligence is verily condemned and put into different types of miseries, either in this present life or in the future. That is the way the Supreme controls everyone. 42. यथा गावो नसि प्रोक्तास्तन्त्यां बद्धाश्च दामभिः वाक्तन्त्यां नामभिर्बद्धा वहन्ति बलिमीशितुः. As a cow bound through the nose by a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. This is an example we'll repeatedly come across in Srimad Bhagavatam. वाक्तन्त्यां कर्तव्य विधायक वेद लक्षणायां नामभिः ब्रह्मचार्यादि वर्णाश्रम लक्षणैः बद्धाः परमेश्वरस्य बलिं तेन प्रेरिताः सर्वे वहन्ति इत्यर्थः. So this refers to the pious population of living entities. Just as a cow is bound through the nose by a long rope, so pious human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions pertaining to their statuses according to Varna and Ashrama. So men have Varnas and Ashramas. Pious men have Varnas and Ashramas as parameter. Pious woman has three dharma as their parameters. So in that way, all of them are conditioned to obey the orders of the Lord. In some readings, this verse does not come. But it is clear that the verse is accepted by Sridhar Swami because he has introduced it. Yatha agreed. So it looks like Sridhar Swami's commentary also has multiple readings. Because, for instance, Jiva Goswami does not recognize this at all, this entire explanation. But in the next verse, in the introduction, This is the introductory remark. He is talking about something which he dealt with, which is mentioned in the previous verse. So on that basis, he says that this verse is acceptable to Sridhar Swami as part of the reading. But in some other readings, Sridhar Swami's entire commentary appears. I myself noticed a particular verse from the first canto itself, which is there in Padyavali, but it is not in the reading of Sridhar Swami or Vishwanath Chakravarti or Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati or Prabhupada. So this is a further explanation of how the Supreme Lord unites people and how he unites people, how he separates people. All of that is explained in terms of this, how the cow is kept under control. There are particular rules for particular positions. If one is a Brahmana, then he must engage in Sandhya Vandana, Gayatri recitation, along with related procedures and so on. So every living being, whether a man or an animal or a bird, thinks that he is free by himself. But actually, no one is free from the severe laws of the Lord. The laws of the Lord are severe because they cannot be disobeyed in any circumstance. The man-made laws may be evaded by cunning outlaws, but in the codes of the supreme lawmaker, there is not the slightest possibility of neglecting the laws. A slight change in the course of God-made law can bring about a massive danger to be faced by the lawbreaker. Such laws of the Supreme are generally known as the codes of religion under different conditions, but the principle of religion everywhere is one and the same, namely, to obey the orders of the Supreme God, the codes of religion. Disobedience to the codes is a condition of material existence. All living beings in the material world have taken up the risk of conditioned life by their own selection and are thus entrapped by the laws of material nature. The human form of life is meant for understanding this conditioned life and then becoming free from the clutches of material existence. And the only way to get out of the entanglement is to agree to obey the Supreme. But instead of becoming free from the clutches of Maya or illusion, foolish human beings become bound up by different nomenclatures, being designated as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Hindus, Mohammedans, Indians, Europeans, Americans, Chinese, and many others. And thus they carry out the orders of the Supreme Lord under the influence of respective scriptural or legislative injunctions. The statutory laws of the state are imperfect imitations of religious codes. The secular state or the godless state allows the citizens to break the laws of God but restricts them from disobeying the laws of the state. The result is that the people in general suffer more by breaking the laws of God than they benefit by obeying the imperfect laws made by man. Every man is imperfect by constitution under the conditions of material existence, and there is not the least possibility that even the most materially advanced man can enact perfect legislation. On the other hand, there is no such imperfection in the laws of God. If leaders are educated in the laws of God, there is no necessity of a makeshift legislative council of aimless men. There is necessity of change in the makeshift laws of man, but there is no change in the God-made laws because they are made perfect by the all-perfect personality of Godhead. The codes of religion, scriptural injunctions, are made by liberated representatives of God in consideration of different conditions of living. And by carrying out the orders of the law, the conditioned living beings gradually become free from the clutches of material existence. Gradually means over lifetimes. Why over lifetimes? Because to become free from lust, anger, greed takes lifetimes. Uh, In one morning walk in Johannesburg, Prabhupada mentions that why this, he talks about why Bahunam Janmanam Ante. He says that he gives this as a sample sexual activity, a very abominable activity, uh, because the most contaminated parts of the body are being united. But he says to understand that it is actually abominable or low class, he says it will take 300 lifetimes. He says it's not just simply by listening to some lecture of Bhagavad Gita you will come to that point. Therefore, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. To actually understand that the nature of this world as it is described in the scripture and to come to the conclusion, actually the scriptures are correct. Before that, on faith, we accept it as correct. But when we realize that it is correct, so to move from faith to realization, it may take time. That is why the Swanishtas take many lifetimes. Why they take many lifetimes? Because they have faith. And they will not touch adharma. They try to avoid sinful activity. And they avoid sinful activity. They don't try to avoid. They actually avoid sinful activities. And they want to progress. So their whole point is we want Trivarga, Dharma, Artha, Kama. So they're not interested in Artha Kama without Dharma. They want Artha Kama with Dharma. So they want Artha Kama but with Dharma. They also want moksha. And they also want Bhagavad Priti. They also want Vishnu Priti. They also want Vishnu to be satisfied, Lord Vishnu to be satisfied. They do want to come to the point where they can attain moksha and Vishnu Priti, liberation and pleasure to Lord Vishnu. But they do know that it takes many lifetimes. There's no need to even justify it. It is axiomatically true. They take it like that. The Parinishtitas, they are more strict. They are not interested in Dharma, Artha, Kama. They will execute the minimal regulations of Vaidika Vedi. Minimal means bare minimum. So which means Nitya Karma, Naimitika Karma. Only the compulsory periodical duties and occasional duties, bare minimum, that are required for them according to their status. For men, according to Varna and Ashrama, and for women, according to Sri Dharma. They are more interested in attaining eternal service to the Supreme Lord with love for Him, even though they also desire Vaikuntha as the best facility wherein one can optimally serve the Supreme Lord to His satisfaction. Still, there is a moksha, vansha. And those who are nirapekshas, they don't bother about this at all. They simply want to get out. They have no desire for bhukti, they are dharmika bhukti. They have no desire for mukti, even savishesha mukti, personal liberation. They simply want to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Obviously, they are not interested in adharmika bhukti, nor are they interested in nirvishesha mukti. But in the conditioned material world, the factual position of the living being is, however, that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. In his liberated state, he renders service to the Lord in transcendental love and thus enjoys a life of full freedom, even sometimes on an equal level with the Lord or sometimes more than the Lord. But in the conditioned material world, every living being wants to be the Lord of other living beings. And thus, by the illusion of Maya, this mentality of lording it over becomes a cause of further extension of conditional life. Strictly speaking, because Krishna is not a miser at all, he can easily give each and every conditioned soul one planet to lord over. The problem is not that they just want to lord over dead matter. Each conditioned soul wants to be the boss of each and every other conditioned soul. Now, who is Krishna going to favor? He's not going to favor any of them because he wants all of them to serve him, which is their constitutional nature. Now, because they are in denial mode of their own nature, they want to forget and be in a delusion. So therefore, Krishna introduces the law of karma and he leaves it up to them. Those of you who are more selfless and more enlightened, you will get more plus points. You will be on the top of the org chart. And those who are less in selflessness and enlightenment, you will be at the bottom of the org chart. So you will just work it out yourself. So this is the illusion of Maya. So in the material world, the living being is still more conditioned until he surrenders unto the Lord by reviving his original state of eternal servitorship. That is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita and all other recognized scriptures of the world. Bhagavad Gita is very, very important. In fact, we are very fortunate that we have an explanation of Bhagavad Gita, which is in line with Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and also relevant to the practitioners in the first stage of their Krishna consciousness. So I will say that obeying Bhagavad Gita, as explained by Prabhupada, should be the first priority in our life. After we make spiritual progress, then obeying Bhagavad Gita with Prabhupada's purports and Srimad Bhagavatam with Prabhupada's purports should be the next set of priorities. And when we make even more spiritual progress, then we should obey Bhagavad Gita as explained by Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam as explained by Prabhupada, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita as explained by Prabhupada. 43. Yatha kridopaskaranam samyoga pigama viha ichaya kriditu syatam tatheve chayan nranam. As by the sweet will of a player, playthings are set up and dispersed, so by the supreme will of the Lord, men are brought together and separated. So, in the previous verse, it was noted that the living beings in this world, they are dependent on the Supreme Lord for their functioning. The sinful living beings obviously are under control because they are thrown into hell. And the mixed souls are just given human bodies in the next life. That goes without saying. So they're all under control in their functioning. Now he points out that their coming together and their separation, that is also under the control of the Supreme Lord. Playthings refer to wooden animals. Mesha, what is mesha in English? Sheep. There's wooden toys of sheep and so on. They are set up and dispersed like that. It also refers to gambling dice and so on, dice for play and so on. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the Supreme Will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 13.23. And therefore, he knows everything of our activities in every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place. A rich man gets a son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who came as the rich man's son deserved such a place, and therefore he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme, even if the child or the father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation. The same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player and his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of our own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied. But it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will, and he is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions, but in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only and no other. Therefore, the example of the player cited in this verse is quite appropriate. For the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes. And because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 9.30 to 31 that the Lord saves a pure devotee who has surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of reactions of sins. And there is no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly he is not himself bound by any action or reaction of his own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental to all laws. So that is 43. So I'll stop with this. Okay, I'll stop with this. Okay. Vanchakapatruvyasya Vipasindu Bheva Chaturdanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.